Welcome to the Resolve Algorithmic Thinking materials. This is a video to show you how to perform a local installation of a Jupyter Notebook environment on Mac OS X. Now you may be aware that there are two different versions of how you can run the algorithmic thinking notebooks. Let me quickly run you through that. There is the option to run them on a web server on Microsoft Azure, so a cloud-based version that requires no installation whatsoever, just getting an account on that cloud server. So that runs out of the box on any platform, in any web browser. And there's a separate video for how to use that. The alternative is you can do a local installation on your individual computer, and that is much faster and doesn't require an internet connection, but the installation can be a little bit involved, so you need to have some practice with using computers, doing installations and so on to follow this. This is really aimed at the IT administrators of the schools, or maybe teachers who are familiar with installations, and not at the end user. So if you're a student, you should probably normally not be seeing this unless you want to do it at home. Again, remember, if you have difficulties with the installation, there's always the cloud version for which there's a separate introductory video. Okay, so let's get going. You may have noticed there's also a written set of instructions that is essentially the same or exactly the same as what we're doing here in the video. So you may want to have the printed notes alongside what we're doing for further help. Right, so the very first thing that we need to do is we need to get a Chrome web browser, because the installation actually relies on Chrome. Now, this is very easily done. You take any web browser that you have, for example here Safari, and you go to www.google.com/Chrome. And for some reason my connection here is very slow, but nevertheless it works. Okay, and then the next thing is you click download Chrome, accept and install, and it's going to go through the procedure. Now, if you take Safari, it will arrive here in the downloads. So let's open the download folder. And you see, there it is, but it is still downloading. Once that's finished, you go through the usual procedure of double-clicking the disk image and letting the application install itself. So once that download is finished, you can simply go to your download window in the usual way, mount the disk image by double-clicking it, and then drag the Google Chrome icon to the applications window. It's copying it over. And you're done. Let's close all these windows and unmount the Google Chrome by dragging it to the trash. So now you have Google Chrome here in your applications window, and for convenience sake I'll drag an alias to the desktop. That was the first step, installing Google Chrome. So now that we've installed Chrome, the next step is to install Anaconda, our Jupyter Notebook environment. So we open a web browser. I'll take Chrome because I have to use it later anyway, but you could take any web browser really. We go to www.continuum.io downloads. And we have to pick a particular distribution. So obviously we want the Mac distribution, so we find that by scrolling a little bit further down, Anaconda 5.0.0 for Mac OS, and we want the Python 3.6 version. Please make sure to use the Python 3.6 version and not the 2.7 that you see on the right hand side. It won't work. So we download this. We may not want the starter guide, or you may want the starter guide, in which case you enter your email there. Now, as you see down here, this is a fairly big package. Depending on your network connection, mine is particularly bad today. This may take a while. Normally it should only take 1 to 2 minutes. So we wait until this is finished. So meanwhile this is finished, and again I can go to my download folder. You see there's still the Google Chrome hanging around from before, which you may delete at this point, or you may just want to keep it around. And here is a new package, which is the Anaconda installer. So we install that by simply double-clicking it, and you get an interactive installer that leads you through these steps. You need to accept the license agreement, obviously. Read that very carefully. In this case I will only install it for me, but normally you would want to install it for all users. I'm not going to do this because I already have an Anaconda installation here. As you've just noticed, sometimes this installer is a little bit stubborn, so it told me before when it came up install only for me wouldn't work, and I had to actually click on install on a specific disk and then again on install for me only before it accepted that. So it will do that now. And the installer goes through the usual motions to finish the installation. Speeding this up now a little bit. Validating the packages. It's writing lots of files into your file system. Down there it says about 8 minutes remaining. So I'm not showing all of this to you to bore you, but just to make sure that the process works for you exactly like it works for us in all its individual steps. So we're just about to finish the installation. As usual, the time is not very reliable that the installer gives. The 8 minutes reduced to less than 1, but this 1 minute that's left, that's dragging out a bit. Now, alright, so we're finished. Close the installer. We may want to keep it if we have to install again on another platform, or move it to the trash. That doesn't really matter at this point. Let's close this window. And, well, where is it actually? Is it here? Is it in the dock? No, it isn't. But if you look in the applications window, you will find the Anaconda navigator there. So again, for convenience sake, I'll move this to the desktop as well, but you could obviously leave it there. Okay, now we're not quite finished yet. We've got Chrome, we've got Anaconda, but we need to customize Anaconda a little bit. So the next step is to customize our Jupyter environment, Anaconda, for maximum performance, and we need to perform 2 steps for that. The first one is to give it a configuration file, the second one to install some extensions. So let's do the configuration file first. For that we need the materials that are distributed through Resolve, and that contains the relevant configuration file. You may have obtained that from the web. I here, for example, have it on a USB stick, so I just mount my USB stick. Here it is, and you see there is a zip file there with all the materials, so I shall unzip that. So the first thing that I do is I drag this archive to the desktop. And once it is there, we can unmount the USB stick in the usual way and double-click the archive to expand it. There we go. Now that we've expanded that, we can actually get rid of the archive, or you may want to keep it around if you need to do something else with it. And here we've got the folder, which is currently called Draft Delivery. It may have a different name, but that doesn't really matter. So in that folder, the first thing that we do is we find the installation instructions. And within the installation instructions is a folder called config up here. Open that. And in there is a file called Jupyter Notebook config.py. Now you need to move this file to a directory that you can really only access via the terminal. So what we do is we go into the applications folder. In the applications folder we find the utilities folder, which is there. Open that, and within there you find the terminal program, so we start that. You may be familiar with Unix, or you may not be. If you're not familiar with Unix, don't worry about it, just do the exact same thing that we're doing here. So what you need to do is you go to a folder that is called .jupyter in your home folder. You're in your home folder now here in that terminal window. We can, by typing in ls -al capital F, you can get a nice little terminal window, and we see we're looking for a folder that's called .jupyter. It's not there yet, so we just make one. Make directory .jupyter. I misspelled that. I spelled mkk directory, so I should have spelled mkdir.jupyter. All of this is in the written instructions as well, if you can't really read it that well in the screencast. We make that directory, and using the cd command we can now go into it, and using the ls-alf, it is of course empty because we've just generated it. Now what we do is we now go to find that file that we were just looking at, the config file. And to make our life a little bit easier, we take that config file that we had found before. Remember, that's in the delivery folder, installations, instructions, config, Jupyter Notebook config, and to make our life a little bit easier, we first copy that to the desktop. It'll just make it a little bit easier to find it if you're not familiar with the Unix environment here. And I'll go back, activate the terminal, and we simply type in copy cp tilde / desktop Jupyter config. You don't have to type that out. If you just type in Jupyter, press the tab button, it will complete it for you, and copy it to the current directory, which is dot. So read that out again: cp tilde / desktop / Jupyter _notebook _config.py space dot. Done. That was hard, but we're there now. ls-alf, and you see the file is in that directory now. So we're ready, we're done with that. Quit the terminal, Anaconda will automatically take that config file. Good, we close the utilities window because we don't need that anymore, and I can actually delete this file now from the desktop. I only put it there temporarily to make access a little bit easier. It's in the .jupyter directory now, where you don't actually see it, and you won't ever need to touch that again. Now the next step is to install the Anaconda Notebook extensions, and that again needs to be done with a command line. So we need to again use the terminal for that. We'll call the utilities folder, which is here. Open the terminal. And what we need to do is we need to type in conda install -c conda -forge space Jupyter contrib _nb extensions. Again, please look at the written instructions for the exact spelling. What happens now? Conda is going to the web server, fetching that package that we've instructed to get the notebook extensions, and depending on your network connection that may take a little while. I'll just let you see what happens on my screen so that you can check that the very same thing happens for you. And it may ask you a couple of questions for updating certain packages, and you just answer yes to that. Still going. I'll leave you with that for a while. You may want to get a cup of coffee in the meantime. And we're done. Okay, so we can get rid of the terminal window again. Now the next thing that we need to do is we do actually need to activate these extensions, and that's done within the Anaconda environment. So we start the Anaconda Navigator here that we had dragged onto the desktop before. So we start Anaconda from here, but crucially before we do anything with Anaconda you need to launch Chrome, otherwise things could go wrong. You don't actually need to have a Chrome window, but Chrome needs to be running, right? Okay, so when it's running, you start the Anaconda Navigator. And the crucial part here for us is the Jupyter Notebook, so we launch a Jupyter Notebook server by clicking that launch button. The terminal comes up, but you can ignore that. And now we're back to Chrome, and you see here are all our files. So this looks very much, this is the file selection window in Jupyter Notebooks. It looks very much like a normal Finder window on macOS, so it lists all your files, in this case the ones in your home directory. So what we need to do now is we need to look at the notebook extensions. So let's go there, we click on this tab here, Notebook Extensions, and then we need to activate a bunch of them. So the first one that we activate is collapsible headings here. Luckily they're in alphabetic order. So tick that, then you tick Hide Input, which is here, and you tick Initialization Cells, which is here. And once you've ticked all of these, you're actually already done. You can go back to the file selection window by going on the Files tab over here. So there's one final step that we have to do, and we have to make these notebooks what's called trusted. That can be done from within Jupyter, so that they can execute certain actions that otherwise they couldn't. We have provided a notebook that does that for you, but you need to launch that notebook. So first, the very first thing, from within this file finder window in Jupyter, you need to find the distribution that you've uploaded onto your computer. And remember, we put that on the desktop, so here I go into desktop. My expanded archive was called draft delivery, so I'm in there now, and what we're looking for is in the installation instructions. So I go into the installation instructions, and there I find a file called Resolve Installation and Verification IPython Notebook, this one here. So I call that. It complains that this notebook isn't trusted, but we can just ignore that and click OK, because we want to run it manually anyway. So these are the final steps of the installation. You're almost there. This is a normal IPython notebook already, so by now you can be certain that Anaconda actually functions, and we're just going to execute the code cells. The code cells are the gray ones, and we execute them by pressing Shift Enter, or on a Mac keyboard, Enter, or on a Mac keyboard Shift Return with a cursor in each of the cells one by one. So let me do that here. Execute a pip install. You see something's happening. As long as the star is there behind the in, the cell is running. Okay, tells you a lot of stuff that you can completely ignore. It may be interesting that it says successfully installed Plotly. That's quite crucial. But it's all done. You don't need to read that in any detail. It's a bit of text, and here's the next code cell. So we go into that, and as you see, that trusts lots and lots of notebooks. So we make that work. Scrolling down. This is done. You notice that because there's no star here anymore. And finally, we do the last cell. Done, no star here anymore. As I said, you're ready. If you come to this point, you've successfully completed the installation. So now by clicking on this list, you can go. But to make sure that it actually really works, let's just quit everything and start again, not with the installation, but start again with using it like any normal user would. So we do that. Every notebook we select from the file menu, close and hold, gone, gone. If it asks you, are you happy to leave this site, that's because there are unsaved changes in the notebook. In this case, we didn't actually want to save anything. Close and hold. And finally, we come back to this. We log out, pressing that button. Or then we can actually close Chrome as well. We go to the Anaconda Navigator. We quit the Anaconda Navigator from the menu. It will warn me that there are applications running. We say yes, we want to quit the notebooks. And we can then get rid of the terminal that Anaconda was using as well. So we're now completely back to a system in which nothing is running. So if we were a normal user, we'd come. First thing that we do is we start Chrome. We can close the window if we want to. We start the Anaconda Navigator. Start the Jupyter Notebooks. Find, in our case, on the desktop, the distribution. Within the distribution, the notebooks folder, and select Start Here, IPython Notebook. Importantly, we don't select Start Here .python.py. It's not a notebook, it won't work. Start Here, IPython NB. And then we can just start to enjoy the lessons. Let's go to lesson 1. So the full installation that you've just performed gives you a number of advantages. One of them is these nice collapsible sections here. So you can actually click on these triangles and collapse sections so that you only have to look at what is actually relevant to you for for you right now as you're reading. The basic installation doesn't do that. But the other and probably more important extension is that you can now use the notebooks fully offline without an internet connection. There's one thing to bear in mind though, the notebooks are set up to be used online, and one needs to do a very, very tiny edit to make them work offline. And you could either do that in all the notebooks, or you could instruct your students to do that. And this happens in the following way. Every notebook starts with these cells that set up the notebook, configure the notebook. And the crucial command here is this, the init notebook mode for Plotly. And it says connected equals true. We're connected to the internet, we can use the Plotly server. As long as you're connected, that's fine. If you're not connected and you've done the full install, you can change that to false to say you're not connected. Bearing in mind that in Python false needs to be spelled with a capital F. And now that you've done that, it will not require the Plotly server anymore. Everything else will run completely as with the connected notebook, except for it will only run on the local machine. And that's the big advantage of this installation. That's it. And there's a short video on how to use the notebooks, so the users should probably read that before they go into that. Okay, enjoy. Thank you very much.